a change since last year. We no longer call them requests for applications. They are now notices of funding opportunity. And I typically just abbreviate that to notice. So this is the pre-application notice that we're talking about now. And we will have one for invited applicants when that happens. Right now, you'll notice that Alejandra has started recording this, and there's also going to be a transcription. The transcriptions tend not to be very valuable because I mumble and talk differently, and so what they print in those transcriptions is not exactly what I say. So, but the recording will be useful, and we'll post that on our website when that becomes available. So on the next slide, we're going to introduce ourselves. My name is Tom Buick. I'm a national program leader in the Institute of Food Production and Sustainability in the Division of Plant Systems Production. You see my email address there. As I mentioned, you can email me at any time to set up a meeting. Be glad to talk with you, if we need to. Jessica?
Hey, everyone. Good to see you all. I am also in the Division of Plant Systems Production, and I'm also on a few other programs like plant breeding, urban indoor ag. So I think I have talked with many of you from some of the other programs I'm on. So good to see you all.
Hi, everybody. My name is Alejandra Godoy. I'm the program specialist. I'm also part of the Division of Plant Systems Production, and I'll be happy to assist you as well with technical questions and any other comments or questions that you have.
And Alejandra is very good at prompting us to do what we're supposed to do. So she will help you out a lot. She helps me out all the time. So I really appreciate her. Next slide. Let's see what we got. Okay, so Jessica, I'm turning it over to you at this point.
All right, great. So we're going to go over a quick NIFA overview, and then we're going to really dig into SCRI. So if we go to the next slide, we're going to start with that NIFA overview. So NIFA was created through the Food Conservation and Energy Act of 2008, also known as the Farm Bill, with the mission of investing in and advancing agricultural research, education, and extension to solve societal challenges, and the vision of catalyzing transformative discoveries, education, and engagement to address agricultural challenges. We're the federal partner of the land-grant university system, and we support initiatives that ensure the long-term viability of agriculture. We also provide funding and strategic leadership for programs that make sure groundbreaking discoveries are reaching the people who need to know about them to put the findings into practice. So next slide, we're going to start getting into some SCRI specifics. So on the next slide, we have the purpose and priorities. SCRI has 5 congressionally mandated priority areas. The first one focuses on plant breeding, genetics, genomics for everything from taste to environmental stress. Second one addresses threats from pests and diseases, also includes pollinator health. The third is a kind of broad category that includes production efficiency, handling, processing, competitiveness in trade, profitability, also a better understanding of soil microbiome, extending the storage life of specialty crops. The fourth is for new innovations in technology, which we're going to get to a little bit more in a second. And then the fifth focuses on food safety risks. And what we're really trying to facilitate with SCRI is project concepts that are built from stakeholders. We want to make sure that the researchers are engaging growers before you even come up with a research agenda to ask the growers or other stakeholders what their challenges are, and then co-build a research concept together that meets the needs of the group. So if you go to the next slide, we're going to kind of focus in on the tech side of those priorities because we have a new special emphasis area this year focused on automation, AI, mechanization, and sensors. And this was created in response to the new USDA research and development priorities, specifically the priority around increasing profitability of farmers and ranchers. As you all know, specialty crops are some of the most labor-intensive crops out there, which is not only expensive, but lately there's been a labor shortage, which has made production really challenging. So the idea behind AIMS is to reduce the amount of labor needed for specialty crop production and processing. And at least $20 million from the SCRI portfolio is going to go towards this category. And like all SCRI projects, AIMS program concepts have to have arisen from the growers, shippers, or processors. And those stakeholders have to be a meaningful part of the research and extension team throughout the life of the project. And I can't emphasize this enough. The stakeholders have to be central to the project development, team, and final extension. Next slide. All right, this is Tom. I'll hand it back to you.
Got to remember that I turned my mic off. Yeah, so this is a question that we get a lot. What is a specialty crop? Is this a specialty crop? Is that a specialty crop? Specialty crops were, for SCRI, were defined in that same farm bill that Jessica talked about, the 2008 farm bill when SCRI was first authorized. And they're fruits and vegetables, tree nuts, dried fruit, horticulture, and nursery crops, including floriculture. I don't even have to read that after all these years. I know it by heart. USDA, in 2008, I realized that there was a lot of wiggle room in that definition. Congress purposely leaves things kind of vague. And so I got a team together across all of USDA, the various agencies and offices that work with specialty crops. And we developed a more in-depth, robust definition. There are tables in that document, which is there's the link there. You can also find it on our website. The tables are not meant to be exhaustive. Okay, so some things, would qualify. The term horticulture is really, very broad. And I remember, 2010 or 2011, I had a scientist, contact me and say, is Waiuli a specialty crop? And I said, well, if you can show me that it's a horticultural crop, then I would consider that. So that person went out and did a really extensive literature review, over 200 citations, about half of which was from the Journal of the American Society for Horticultural Science. And so I thought, well, if my colleagues think that this is a horticultural crop, then it must be. So Waiuli has been accepted, and then other rubber producing crops that fall, in line with Waiuli have also been considered specialty crops. So what you'll find is the different agencies all have different missions, and so their definitions, vary slightly, but we adhere to the agreed upon definition, and certainly we have to go by the definition in the Farm Bill. A little bit too much there. Go ahead, Alejandra. Eligibility. This is another question. Can I apply? You can read it. I'm not going to go into it. One of the things that is a little bit different from some other programs at NIFA is that research institutions and organizations, private organizations or corporations can apply. Okay, small businesses can apply, but we are not the Small Business Innovation Research Program. So we don't, there's some things that we don't fund, but you are eligible to apply if you're going to do research and extension. Next. Different project types. We have our standard research and extension projects, coordinated agricultural projects. New this year is the workforce readiness and talent pipeline project. And then we have planning projects. There's two application types. It's either a new application or a resubmission. And for the pre-application, you do not have to address the comments of the previous review, but you should indicate that it is a resubmission on the SF 424. Next. So I'm going to go into the description of different project types. Kind of got them out of order here. The first I'm going to talk about is the Coordinated Agricultural Project, or CAP. These project periods are up to 5 years. Budget normally doesn't exceed $2 million per year, but it can be greater for projects addressing the aims special emphasis. So that's something to take into consideration when you're applying to that special emphasis area. The purpose is to address specific multiple components of a primary system or multiple components of areas where primary systems overlap. And that says here, see figure 1. We don't have figure 1 anymore because there was language in that figure that didn't fit into current administration priorities. So we don't have it anymore. But if you think of a Venn diagram where you have production system, processing and handling system, and then the consumer system, what we're looking for is at the intersection of those three primary systems, projects that address multiple components. So it's either 2 or 3 of those components. If you look at the statistical analysis of previous funding, this only goes to 24 because we haven't announced the funding for projects in FY25, so it's just through 24. But you can see, I think that the range of awards is pretty amazing, just under 2 to just over $10 million. So we're looking for projects that are complex and have a scope that would require a fairly large budget. Next. And so this is, again, this is all in the notice. This is on page 10, and that's one thing that's consistent throughout all these slides. What we're talking about, we referenced the notice of funding opportunity, and so you can go there and look at the language, and then if you have questions, you can either email me or set up a meeting, and we'll go from there. On the standard research and extension projects, which is on the next slide, this is on page 11. So you'll see that the budget, expectations are a little bit different. Normally $1 million a year, up to 5 years. And we really discourage projects that have a total budget of less than $250,000. That's not the scale of project that we're really looking to support in SCRI. There's many other programs in NIFA that would support smaller projects. And so that's, we can help guide you to those if you can't find them on our website. Again, look at the statistical analysis, just under $250,000. That was a very short, actually the project only was for 2 years. And then a maximum award of just over 6. So what we have found is that as time goes on, there's inflation, the cost of doing research and extension continues to escalate. The project requests have gone up. We put these numbers out there to help people manage their expectations. We don't want people to just say, oh, well, there's no limit on what the budget can be, so I'm going to have, I'm going to get 10 objectives and then I'm going to ask for $25 million, because we probably wouldn't fund that. So we want you to look at, what can, in a 5-year period of time, what can we, realistically accomplish? What would the objectives be? And then what will we realistically need to accomplish those objectives? Then give us that budget. And if it exceeds these numbers here, don't worry about it and just put it into the budget narrative, put in a justification for why that's needed. Next. And we'll just, again, this is on page 11. One of the things that's in both of those is that there's an expectation that you're going to have outside advisory committees for your projects. This is really, really important because we want a continuous reevaluation of, are these objectives what we really need to be working on? How are we progressing along the road to accomplishing those objectives? And then, do we have to make any mid-course corrections in order to do that? So you can go ahead forward, Alejandra. So this is the new project type, and I put on my reading glasses because I want to make sure I give you accurate information here. So project period up to 5 years. That's the maximum for all these three. A budget that's about between $1 and $5 million for the whole project period. So, we anticipate, this is again new, so we don't really know. We anticipate that there's going to be projects of varying scope. And so there may be some small, medium-sized projects and then some that are more expansive. And the purpose is to create a workforce with the skills needed to address not present labor needs, but the labor needs of the specialty crop sector into the future. As we, become more and more technical, there's a need to have workers that can keep up with the times. And so that's really where we're trying to get to. We don't have any statistical analysis because this is the first year. Next. So we're going to award these projects to groups to develop and deliver research and extension programming that provides training and skill building programs that address workforce challenges in the specialty crop industry by disseminating science-based tools. Funded projects should support the development of a modern, technically skilled workforce capable of meeting evolving needs of specialty crop production, processing, handling, and marketing. So, we're trying to be forward-thinking. And we know that there's going to be a lot of good ideas coming out of this. So next, we're going to talk about the last project type, which is the planning projects. These are 1 year in duration, $50,000 maximum per project. And we have two types of planning activities. First is to provide assistance to applicants in the development of quality future SREP or CAP, or even the workforce development, and to provide assistance to consumer, producer, and industry groups for developing strategic research and extension plans. So where industries are smaller or disorganized, they haven't had a chance to come together and figure out what they need moving forward. We want to try to support those activities as well. Next. Okay, this is a big issue. I've been getting a lot of questions about this. So, as I mentioned, we're first authorized in the 2008 Farm Bill, and it included a requirement that federal funds be matched 1-to-1 with non-federal funds. So, the FY26 appropriation states that the Secretary may waive the SCRI matching requirement. It was decided that the match would be waived if one of two conditions were met. And those are the two conditions right there. The results are of particular benefit to a specialty crop, but such results are likely to be applicable to specialty crops or agricultural commodities in general, or the grant involves a minor commodity, deals with scientifically important research, and the recipient is unable to satisfy the matching requirement. That language is broad enough that if you can't figure out how your project fits into one of those two categories, I would be I would be shocked. Now, and I don't know if, go to the next slide. I want to make sure that I don't start talking ahead of myself, but yeah, so for the pre-applications, budgets are not required. Okay, so you don't have to have matching funds in the pre-application phase, but be prepared because we're going to require that you indicate in the full application which or both, how your project qualifies for a waiver of the matching. So that, that's coming up if you get invited to submit a full application. Next. I think I turn it back over to Jessica at this point.
All right. So these are some of the changes to SREPs and CAPs. This is also some things that we've always required, so it's kind of everything together. But first of all, we are requesting an executive summary for the pre-applications, which we just started doing a couple of years ago. We used to only request those for full applications. So if you haven't applied for SCRI in the last few years, take note of that. And this is what we request that you put in the executive summary for the SREP and CAPs. This is also in the pre-app notice, which you'll also hear me call NOFO. So next slide. We also require a project description. This has a max of 6 pages for SREPs and CAPs. These are the things you should focus on in your project description. They are also listed in that notice, as I mentioned. So you can see that we bolded the significance of the project to stakeholders. That's new and a really important part of the pre-application. So just make sure to note that. In the next slide, we'll talk about the appendices that you can have. So for SREPs and CAPs, you get 4 appendices. They are listed here, but there are 2 important things that I want to point out. One is that you are not allowed to have additional appendices. This is it. So you need to stick to the page limits for the appendices that have been listed here, and you can't put in extras. The other thing that I want to note is that you're going to need to combine these PDFs for your project description into a single PDF file because the application package in grants.gov does not allow you to attach multiple files. We probably get 24 questions about this every year. So you have to combine them into a single file. You'll notice that the bio appendix is limited to 7 pages. And what we want in the pre-application is not your 20-page CV. We just want a short bio. And if you go to the next slide, you will see Tom's bio. And he could obviously spend dozens of pages detailing his illustrious career, but he stuck to a short paragraph, just letting the reviewers know where he works and what his specialty is. So this is what we're looking for in the pre-app bios specifically. So if you go to the next slide, Tom covered the new project type, WRTPP. And here is what you need for the WRTPP pre-application. It's very similar to what you need for SREPs and CAPs, but the project type is workforce development. Now, if we go to the next slide, you're going to see the project description, which is a little bit different. You need to include how stakeholders were engaged, not only in determining the content of the training, but also how they'll continue to be engaged in training improvement. You also have to make it clear who your focus audience is, how participants are going to be recruited, and what placement support there's going to be. And the application needs to include an effective strategy for documenting participant success once the training is completed. If you go to the next slide, we have the appendices. For WRTPP, you only get 3 appendices. short bios, letters of support from stakeholders, and letters of collaboration from team members. So no logic model for these. On the next slide, we have planning projects. So if you are submitting a planning project, we also require an executive summary. Here are the things we require in that summary. Again, this is all in the pre-app notice. Next slide is what we require in the planning grant for the project description. Note that the page limit for planning projects is 3 pages. Very short, so you have to be concise. Next slide. You should not include a logic model for planning projects. You're only allowed to have 3 appendices. And again, you have to combine these into a single file with your project description. And you'll notice I'm not saying you don't need a logic model. I'm saying you cannot have one. It's really, we're really strict about only having the appendices that are listed here. So next slide, there are some reminders when it comes to pre-applications. Like I have said several times, don't include a logic model for WRTPP or planning projects. Those should only be included for SREP and CAP applications. For the appendix with your letters of support, we highly recommend including a list of everyone who provided letters of support along with the actual letters. This is organizationally really helpful for reviewers who are going to be reading each of your letters in your pre-application. Another question we get a lot is about responses to previous reviewers if you have already submitted applications. So do not include responses to previous relevance reviewers in your pre-app. Do not include citations, no cover letters, no detailed budget or budget narratives. And again, this isn't a suggestion. We don't allow them in pre-applications because it could pose an unfair advantage for those who do include them, even though they're not allowed. Next slide. So where can you find this pre-application notice? It is available on our website under the funding opportunities section. The deadline is 5 p.m. Eastern time on June 15th, 2026. And the pre-application needs to be submitted through grants.gov. There's no other way to submit it. Don't, send us an email with it attached. Don't send it in paper copy. And we are real strict with the deadline. So get your pre-apps in early, especially if you've never submitted one before. Grants.gov can be difficult to navigate. You might get error messages if your attachments are, say, in the wrong format. Basically, give yourself time to find the potential errors and fix them so you're not scrambling at 5:59 p.m. to convert a Word document into a PDF. And every single year we get someone who the next day is like, oh my goodness, my letters of support were in a Word document or didn't show up because of an error. Can I send it to you so that you can attach it now, even though it's after the deadline? And the answer is no. So I cannot stress enough, try and submit your pre-application a few days early so that if there are any of those errors, you have time to deal with them. And you might have to reach out to grants.gov support to help you. It just takes time. So please do it early if you can. We also put in some other basic information about the program on this slide, and all this information is in the notice for pre-applications. So next slide, I think I might be handing it back to Tom.
Yeah, we just tried to parse this out so that we could rest our vocal cords in between. So, to submit the application, as Jessica just said, has to be electronically. All the documents have to be in PDF or they won't be visible to the reviewers. And that could be a deal breaker if you don't do that. And there's a few things about the PDF format, and I think I get to it later. Oh, there it is right there. yeah, so grants.gov might allow you to submit a Word file or an Excel spreadsheet or whatever. We can't, we don't use those. And so our software will not bring those over from grants.gov. So don't do that. Don't use third-party PDF builders. Those can be really troublesome for our systems. And then do not password protect. It says there should not. I left that alone, but do not use the password protect, because then when the reviewers try to go in, they can't open the file. And guess what? That doesn't put them in a good mood. And so your pre-app is not going to get a very good review. So make sure that none of those things happen when you do the submission. Next. Okay, so this is the evaluation process. So we get all the pre-applications. We have been recruiting industry folks to review the pre-applications, and we sort the pre-applications into panels of related crops or topics. So when I say topics, if we get enough pre-applications, we'd have a panel for pollinators, or we have one for produce food safety. We have one for controlled environment agriculture. And so so those are topics, but then we have berries, we have solanaceous fruits, we have, fruity vegetables like beans, corn, potatoes is one, so we have the various, nursery and floriculture. So we separate them out into the various panels. What we try to do is, the industry folks are very busy. And so in order to get them to agree to do this, we try to keep their time commitment to about 20 hours. And so each one of these panels only has about 10 or 12 pre-applications in each panel. And then so the reviewers will produce individual reviews of each of the pre-applications, and then they evaluate on the relevance to industry challenges. We use a matrix to sort the pre-applications into high, medium, and low priority categories. And then the individual results are discussed in a panel meeting. And those panel meetings are about 2 hours in length. And then through the discussion, the relevance panels decide which of the pre-application teams are invited to submit full applications. So the only part in the process that we play is sorting the pre-applications into the various panels. That's one really critical reason why we ask you to identify 3 keywords from the appendix at the end of the NOFO, because those keywords really parallel the panels that we use. And so it's very important that you get an accurate, you want to get your pre-app into the proper panel so that it gets invited to submit a full application, bottom line. All right, so I'm not going to read this. You can see the pre-application evaluation criteria on page 20. You'll notice that it's different than the scientific evaluation criteria. This is specific to the pre-application process. And even with my reading glasses on, that's too hard for me to read. Okay, next slide. These are a new set of criteria for the workforce readiness and preparedness projects. And so this is not really my bailiwick, but Jessica and I worked on these descriptions and the criteria. And then we went to some of our colleagues who deal with these kinds of programs, as on a regular basis, and we got input from them to make sure that we would get the kind of evaluation that we really need to have. Next slide, and that's on page 21. Next. And then for planning projects, again, it's a different set of criteria. We don't expect you to have all the answers in a planning project, and so a lot of times unless the idea simply does not come from the result, collaborating with, stakeholders, a lot of planning projects do get invited to submit full applications, but that's really one of the keys. The industry people, so let's say, in a tree fruit panel, as an example, we'll have apple growers, pear growers, cherry growers, peach growers, and they'll go like, well, I don't know anything about what peach growers need, but I see that they've been talking to them. And so I think this would be a good planning project to move forward. So that's really the key that you want to emphasize. Next. Okay, a lot of people have been asking about timeline. This is the slide for that. So we released the notice in April. The requests are due in June. And so that is where we are now. The pre-applications will be under relevance review in July. And in early August, we'll notify you whether you're invited to submit a full application or not. At that time, hopefully, we've already got the notice for full applications in the clearance process. So hopefully we'll have it by August. And we will provide that to you. And the time that those applications will be due will be in there. It'll be around mid-September. I can tell you that much. So we try to give people more time to prepare the pre-application than the full application, because a lot of the preparation that you've done now, you'll use down the road for the full application. What I always tell people at this point in time is, once you submit your pre-application, don't stop. Don't wait until you get an invitation to figure out what you're going to put in the full application. Keep working with your team, keep talking to your stakeholders, and then, be ready to incorporate things from the results of the relevance review. But, if you wait until, sometime in August, you potentially won't be able to meet the mid-September deadline. And like I mentioned at the beginning, we will have a webinar like this for full applicants, for submission of full applications. There was something else I wanted to say right here. Now I forgot. Oh, well. Maybe I'll think of it later. Next. And actually, it wasn't part of the script. So I'll turn it back over to Jessica at this point.
So you can find all the funded projects from SCRI in the NIFA reporting portal or our data gateway. We encourage you to look at what's been funded through SCRI so that you can get an idea of what kinds of projects the reviewers find compelling, especially if you've never received an SCRI grant before. On the next slide, you'll see that we have a lot of grant resources available on the NIFA website. We encourage you to go to our website, look through them, especially because things have been updated over the last year. So just make sure that you're up to date on the latest developments at NIFA. And next slide, speaking of latest developments, if you want to get all of the SCRI emails that we send out, which aren't that many, honestly, it's, when the NOFO gets released, etc. You can send me an email and I will add you to our listserv. Next slide has our contact info. Feel free to reach out to us, but before you reach out to us, we request that you read the notice for pre-applications. I'd say about 80% of the questions I get, I can just copy and paste the answers from that notice. So if you don't mind reading that first, that would be great, helpful for us. And I think we are ready for questions. Is that right? There are a lot in the chat. Tom has been answering as we go. So I'm just going to read them really quick. Number one, is this recorded? Yes, it is recorded. If the pre-proposal is selected for a full proposal submission and you move to a new university, that's fine. Just let us know so that we can match your pre-app to the full app. Is the new project type of WRTPP something we expect to remain at least another year? Tom says yes, I say maybe. So you're gonna have to check your crystal ball for that one. We'll see. Flagging that the NOFO says planning grant budget, federal funds up to $100,000 per project.
I think that's for
right.
the new emphasis area,
Oh,
the
okay.
Ames emphasis area. For the other types, it's the 50,000. But I'll check and I'll let you know. That was who asked that, Amber?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should we indicate somewhere in the pre-app if we meet and are playing using the waiver? No. Can I collaborate with universities outside of the US? Yes.
Yes.
But make sure that you read all of the executive orders that have come out about those kinds of collaborations, just so that you are up to date on, countries of concern, etc. Is fieldwork conducted primarily in the US territories as opposed to states eligible for funding? Yes. For keywords, does automation, AI, and mechanization count as one keyword? So all of the keywords are actually listed in the notice of pre-application. So if you scroll, it's somewhere near the end. It's one of the last pages. You'll see all of those options for keywords. And you have to choose from that list. Otherwise, we'd get all kinds of wild keywords. We want to keep them consistent.
Yeah, and the other thing too is, as I explained, we use those keywords to put you into a panel, and the Ames projects are going to go into the appropriate crop panels. It's not going to be a separate. That's not an issue area. It's not like produce food safety. So and that our relevance panel chair this year, she's from the industry. She felt, her name is Kay Rensel. She felt that it would be better in the various crop groupings, because those people know whether these projects are going to be useful for them. So
yeah, and really, take some time to think about those keywords, because if you don't want your proposal being evaluated in, say, the berry panel versus the tree nut panel, don't put that as a keyword, because like Tom said, that really will decide which panel evaluates it. Is there a maximum for industry members' letter of supports? No max.
And no minimum.
And no minimum. I think if they don't have it, though, you can't not have any.
Yeah. Well,
otherwise,
if you don't have any, you're not going to, you won't get invited. I'll just tell you that much. It's not even worth your time to submit.
Yeah. I think we even reject without review for that, because it's missing a critical. That's one of our required documents.
So I just noticed that Jessica's image froze. So there was one question here. Can you clarify if the SRS requires consolidation of the conflict of interest list for key personnel? No, you submit those where it tells you to submit them in the application guidelines. And we do want the full conflict of interest forms. So that is, so you put together your stakeholder relevant statement with the appendices. They have to be all in one document, but the conflict of interest forms and the other information does not have to be. And LB has her hand raised. Why don't you've been patient there, LB. Why don't you go ahead and ask your question? You have to come off mute, though.
Yes, thanks, Tom. It's Linda Brewer in Oregon, where
Hi, Linda.
Where the slug-a-beds were finishing breakfast at the beginning of the meeting. My question is this, and I realize it's kind of off target for this webinar, but what I do is manage these grants, and take a lot of the paperwork clock watching burden off the PD or the PI. And I can't access the it's not report anymore, but I have trouble accessing those sites because I'm not the PD or the PI, and I just wonder if anybody in DC is thinking about that.
Well, most of
Linda,
us aren't in DC, so probably not. But that would be a question to send to
Uh-huh.
the report email address that we have. I'll get that to you, Linda,
I'd be
because
so grateful.
they can I think they can make it available to you.
Okay, thanks so much.
Sure. You don't have to use Cyan CV for the biosketches in the pre-application. You would have to use it in the full application. Irene has her hand up. Go ahead, Irene.
Hi, Sam. Hi, everyone. Are there any guidelines on what stakeholder support letters should contain? There's really not much guidance in the NOFO.
Yeah, so
About that?
what I've learned over the years is that the people that are on these review panels are stakeholders, right, for various projects. And they can spot a form letter a mile away. And they'll go like, oh, yeah, I signed 15 of those last week. So I didn't even really know what the project was about, but I know those people. And, so I signed a letter. So you want these the support letters to be in their own words. Why are they really excited by the project? And that's really the only guidance that we have. Otherwise, you just want the reviewers to understand that these people who provided these letters, they took time out of their day, they put it on their company letterhead. They really truly support the project.
it's really a signal to the relevance reviewer that this is so much of a priority. Solving this issue that the application will solve is such an important thing to that stakeholder that they're willing to spend the time to write a really good letter of rec for it, or letter of support.
Thank you.
I can keep going through the list in the meeting chat if you want, Tom.
Go ahead. That's what I was
All right.
just going to try to do.
Yeah, so no references, citations in pre-proposal. No references at all. What is the anticipated timeline from the June 15th deadline in relevance to review, notification, full application invitation, and award announcement? Tom, you feel more comfortable about wild guesses than I do, so I'll let you answer that one.
What was the question again? I thought I answered that.
Oh, did you already answer the timeline one? When
Well, yeah, I
people
did it
get
in
invited?
they'll get invited in August. That's, according to the timeline that we have, it'll be at the beginning of August. Full applications will be due sometime in mid-September. And then, we're trying to get back to our normal timeline. We had it, for about 3 or 4 years. The pre-application notice would come out in October, and then industry people have more time. We could get more reviewers, and then the full applications would get reviewed, mid-May to early June, and our scientific reviewers had more time at that time, so we could recruit reviewers more easily. We got thrown off, and we're trying to get back to that. So that's really what we're trying to do. Yeah, the other thing I wanted to say, that there was one thing about having references in the body of the text. That's a no-no. But there is a block in the pre-application for a cover letter. Do not submit a cover letter. Last year, I rejected pre-applications because they had a cover letter. That, and the reason I did was because they were using it to circumvent the page limits. We have the page limits there for a reason. It's because we don't want the relevance reviewers' eyes to glaze over, and then they say, it's too hard, I'm just not going to do it. Because they have real full-time jobs, right? They work 60 to 80 hours a week, and we're asking them to give us another 20 hours. So do not do that, please. Let's go down here. There's a couple more that I wanted to get to. It said, what is a third-party PDF builder? I don't know. It's in there, and so it causes problems. So, so just please don't do that.
Adobe's fine though.
Yeah. Adobe's not a third party. It is the party, right? If we're working with diversified vegetable producers on their farm, management as a whole, should I list other crop? I would say no, because, if it's a vegetable, pick one, okay? Or pick three. There you have multiple options. And then that gives us some latitude, like if we have 25 where they've picked solanaceous crops, but you also have green beans listed, then we can move it in, we can move them around and keep the panels manageable. That's a, it's an imperfect system, but it's the only one we got. And I think we already answered this: to meet multi-state requirement, collaboration with U.S. territories. Just remember, people that live in the territories are U.S. citizens, and so that is absolutely allowed. Planning grants. So it's a little bit tricky on the planning grants. That should the stakeholder letters show their support, involvement in the project? Well, that's maybe one reason that you have a planning project, is because you want to reach out to you say. So what you might identify in the planning project is these are the groups of stakeholders we're going to reach out to, okay? And they don't have to be involved up front in preparing the planning, but they should be involved in the planning itself. So it doesn't do standard research and extension projects need to be multi-institutional and or multi-state. Yes, just say yes, because if they're not, you might not get invited, but you certainly wouldn't get funded. Oh, so that was from Linda. So she wants us not to forget her question. Can you have a copy of the slides? I think that's intended, right? Holly, we're going to put them on the website.
Yes, we can do that.
Okay.
I'm still seeing questions about the automation, artificial intelligence, mechanization sensor as a keyword. So yeah, it's in the list of keywords. You definitely should include it if you are using it. But as Tom said, there's not going to be a separate panel for it. So make sure that you also include, let's say you're making, automation for strawberries. Make sure that you select number 12 strawberries, in addition to putting automation, artificial intelligence, mechanization, and sensors.
Yeah,
yeah,
we've never had that before. So it wasn't in the version of the notice that I submitted for clearance. They made me put that in there. It wasn't my intent to have that as a keyword. So, it might be good so that we know. It's more important for the full application because that's where the differences in budget and whatnot happen. So I would say if you have 3 crops that you want to choose, then I would choose the crops rather than that, because that's not going to really be a determining factor. Hey Frank, how you doing? Good to see your name there.
Yeah, very well. Nice to see you. We were curious about if for a well-integrated Ames focused project, you're allowed to go over that 2 million per year. What do you sense is a reasonable level of funding for that, for a well-integrated Ames project?
Frank, it's new, right? So I really don't know. And that whole area isn't really what I studied, right? So, it's just like I said, though, what can you get done in 5 years?
Yeah.
What are your objectives going to be? What is it going to cost?
Yeah.
That's how you do it.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Yeah. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, we really want the project to dictate the budget, not the budget to dictate the project. So
yeah, no, that's
what
it
costs is what it costs.
Yeah. Very good. Thanks.
Yeah. So how necessary is it to have the advisory panel, particularly in the pre-proposal phase? I would say it's not as critical now, but you should at least indicate that you're going to have one down the road. Person number 2, Frank didn't put his hand down, so you're still listed as number 2. You don't have your name there. I see your face though. So go ahead and ask your question. You're on mute.
This is Jamie. Go ahead.
Okay, you're still on mute, so okay, so looking at the NOFO page 16, I'd like to confirm there are no citation or references allowed. That's correct. This is not the scientific merit panel, okay? This panel is not going to go look up your references. They're not going to go look at your CV, so don't put them in there because again, I always consider that my primary job in this process is to make sure that everybody gets a fair review. And so if some people put in references and other people do not, that's not a level playing field. So we just go, don't do it. In the pre-application, don't do it. In the full application, of course you have to do it because that's being reviewed by scientists. They may go and look at your materials. In fact, we had one project submitted a couple of years ago where they used AI to generate the text, and it put in a citation that didn't exist, right? And they checked it, and oh man, that really caused some problems for that team, So be careful about that too. The waiver won't be until the full application where you submit your budgets. There will be 45 days between the notification and the due date for the full application. Are pre-award costs allowable? That question is way. Pre-applications don't result in an award, so that if you're recommended for funding, then there are certain rules and regulations that do allow pre-award costs, but that's for a different time. And we're over our time, so I'm just gonna. Is there any other considerations for a small business serving as the prime? No. The one thing that you might, and again, for the pre-application, it doesn't result in an award, so you're not going to request indirect cost. But if you get invited, you might want to contact our Office of Grants and Financial Management and negotiate an indirect cost rate. Otherwise, you get the de minimis, they call it. And I think right now that's 11% or something. And if your overhead is more than that, you just wouldn't be able to recoup it. Okay. All right. Thanks, Massimo. I'll look into that. And I don't know.
Someone
Yeah.
asked if there's a page limit for the executive summary. This is the perfect example of please read the notice for pre-applications, because in there it says exactly the page limit for the executive summary as it does for all the sections. It's 2 pages.
Yeah. Field work in territories permitted, yes. Can the same organization submit multiple? Yes. Workforce, is there a cap on the budget? It would said 1 to 5 million. That's kind of the range we expect. Yeah, it's all one keyword. And I'm going to go to the people on the screen. RG, you're first.
Yeah, regarding the overhead, you said that the rate is 11%, but I've seen universities sometimes, even though the USDA has, let's say, 11% overhead, they still request the higher amount. Is that 11% set in stone, or
That's what's called the de minimis. So all universities have a negotiated indirect cost rate. For SCRI, and again, this is for full applications, not pre-applications.
Right.
But there, the overhead for USDA is limited to 30% of total funds awarded. So, most universities have an overhead rate that's in excess of 30%. So they have to restrict their overhead. If you have a negotiated rate, that's what you can request. And last question, you don't have a name there. I see your face. Go ahead.
Hey, Tom, it's me, Massimo.
Hi, Massimo.
Hey, a couple of quick questions. So on the waiver, the condition, like you said, it might be easy to meet that condition. But if you work on 2 crops like blueberry, cranberry, I guess will that automatically meet one of the condition? We have other way to meet the condition, but could that be one of the condition? Somebody working on 2 crops on a grant?
Yes.
And the second thing you mentioned is something about cover letter before that I didn't get exactly. Sometime when I put on the appendix, I used to put a cover page for that appendix. Is that okay, or was what you were referring to not to do it?
Yeah, so I think what you're referring to is like if you have an appendix for letters of support, you just list the organizations that provided letters.
Exactly.
That's actually recommended that you do that.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was hearing from.
Yeah, the cover letter is there's a box on the pre-application form, the SF 424, where it says you can upload a cover letter into that space. And so a lot of people said, well, I just assumed that it was required if there's a space for it, but it's not required, and in fact, it's prohibited. So.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right. Okay, everyone. As we said, we're going to post the recording. We're going to put up the slides, and you're